The Galactic Prosperity Collective had, in its infinite wisdom and bureaucratic efficiency, managed to catalog exactly 847 civilized species across 12 spiral arms of the galaxy. This was no small feat, considering that most civilizations had the good sense to evolve on worlds where the local flora didn't actively attempt murder, and the fauna hadn't spent millions of years perfecting the art of creative violence. The classification protocols were, naturally, exhaustive. Every world received its proper designation, from the pleasant Class 1 garden worlds where the most dangerous creature might give you a mild rash, all the way up to the legendary Class 12 Deathworlds, planets so aggressively hostile that even theoretical speculation about them required hazard pay and psychological counseling. Only 17 Class 12 worlds had ever been discovered. 16 had been quarantined, studied from a safe distance of several star systems, and marked with warning beacons that essentially screamed nope in 847 different languages. The 17th was a charming little rock called Earth, which had been listed as extinction event probability absolute after the first and last survey probe had been eaten by something the survey team described only as "oh gods, why does it have so many teeth?" This was, according to the finest minds in the galaxy, perfectly reasonable. After all, who in their right mind would try to live on a planet where the weather actively attempted genocide? The local megafauna considered anything smaller than a mountain a light snack, and the dominant species had apparently thought it was a good idea to keep carnivorous animals as pets. The answer, as it turned out, was humans. But the galaxy hadn't gotten that memo yet. Station Kepler 442 was considered the crown jewel of xenobiological research, a gleaming testament to interspecies cooperation and the pursuit of knowledge. It orbited peacefully around a pleasant yellow star, collecting data on local phenomena and hosting the occasional academic conference. The station's complement of researchers represented 43 different species, all of whom had evolved on worlds where evolution had been polite enough to follow reasonable rules. Today's conference was particularly prestigious, mythological Deathworld species, separating folklore from biology. Dr. Vexthulan Meridios of the crystalline hegemony had spent the better part of 3 decades studying extinct civilizations, and his presentation on the legendary humans was considered the highlight of the academic calendar. Dr. Meridios adjusted his photonic resonance display and began his lecture to an audience of distinguished xenobiologists. "Colleagues," he announced, his crystalline form refracting the room's lighting into pleasant rainbows. "Today we examine one of the galaxy's most persistent mythological cycles, the Earth-human phenomenon." The audience settled in with the satisfied anticipation of academics about to hear their preconceptions validated. Professor Quilm Sheravorthan of the Methane Collective activated her environmental suit's recording function and leaned forward with interest. According to recovered data fragments, Dr. Meridios continued, humans allegedly possessed several biologically impossible characteristics. They were described as persistent predators, capable of chasing prey across vast distances until the target died of exhaustion. They supposedly consumed toxins for pleasure, maintained stable pair bonds with apex predators, and engaged in recreational activities that would kill most sapient species. A ripple of amused skepticism passed through the audience. Dr. Kelthera Vexnuth, whose species had evolved in the pleasant low-gravity gardens of Centauri Prime, gestured with one of her delicate manipulator appendages. "Surely these are simple mythological exaggerations? No species could actually survive the conditions described in these folklore fragments." "Precisely my point," Dr. Meridios replied, his form brightening with academic satisfaction. "Consider the alleged human practice of marathon running. Supposedly, individuals would voluntarily traverse over 40 kilometers without mechanical assistance, in atmospheric pressure that would liquefy most civilized species' respiratory systems. Clearly impossible." Professor Vorthan activated her suit's translation matrix. "And what of their supposed cuisine?" The legends describe humans deliberately consuming caustic chemicals called spices that were apparently extracted from plants evolved specifically to prevent consumption. The mythological implications are fascinating, but biologically absurd. The assembled xenobiologists murmured agreement. It was well established that evolution produced reasonable, logical adaptations. Species evolved to avoid pain, not seek it out. They developed sophisticated methods of food preparation that removed harmful substances, not added them. And they certainly didn't engage in activities that served no survival purpose while simultaneously threatening their continued existence. The most telling aspect, Dr. Meridios continued, warming to his theme, is the alleged human relationship with their planetary environment. According to these folklore fragments, humans supposedly thrived on a Class 12 Deathworld. They described their planet as beautiful and engaged in something called camping, deliberately exposing themselves to uncontrolled environmental conditions for recreation. The audience's amusement was palpable. Dr. Quiltherin Mexvara, whose species had spent millions of years evolving sophisticated climate control systems, rippled with what passed for laughter among the adaptive Silicon Collective. One might as well claim they threw themselves off cliffs for entertainment, she observed. According to the legends, Dr. Meridios replied with perfect academic deadpan, they called that bungee jumping. The conference hall erupted in the various sonic expressions of amusement that 43 different species could produce. It was a delightfully ridiculous image, sapient beings voluntarily subjecting themselves to gravitational acceleration for no logical purpose. The very idea violated every principle of evolutionary psychology, which was, of course, precisely the moment that Station Kepler 442's AI chose to make an announcement. Attention all personnel. The synthetic voice announced with the perfect calm that only artificial intelligences could maintain in the face of bureaucratic impossibilities. We have received a request for docking clearance from the Terran Colonial Authority vessel Wandering Star. Please prepare for routine diplomatic inspection. The conference hall fell silent. 43 different species of distinguished academics sat in the particular kind of stunned quiet that accompanied the realization that the universe had just played an elaborate practical joke on them. Dr. Meridios was the first to recover. There must be some mistake, he announced, his crystalline form flickering with confusion. The Terran Colonial Authority doesn't exist. Terra is the mythological name for Earth, which is a classified death world with an extinct biosphere. Negative, the AI replied with mechanical cheerfulness. Colonial Authority records indicate active human settlements on 47 worlds across 6 sectors. Current vessel commander is listed as Tobias Kowalski, diplomatic rank equivalent to station liaison officer. Shall I refuse docking clearance? Professor Vorthen's environmental suit began cycling through emergency protocols. Humans? Actual humans. But they are supposed to be extinct. The vessel appears quite functional, the AI observed. Commander Kowalski has provided proper diplomatic credentials and seems unaware of any extinction events. His requesting permission to attend the Xenobiology conference, as he found the topic pretty interesting. The academic community present was experiencing what sociologists would later classify as paradigm shock, the peculiar mental state that occurs when one's fundamental understanding of reality requires immediate and dramatic revision. Dr. Meridios stared at his presentation materials, which suddenly seemed less like serious academic research and more like a collection of grossly inadequate field notes. What are his biological threat assessments? Dr. Kelthera asked, her voice climbing into registers that suggested imminent panic. According to Galactic classification protocols, humans are rated as extinction event probability, absolute. However, Commander Kowalski has been quite polite and offered to bring coffee for the station crew. I'm not entirely certain how to reconcile these data points. The assembled xenobiologists looked at each other with the dawning realization that they were about to conduct the galaxy's first impromptu experiment in Deathworld diplomacy. Professor Vorthen activated her suit's emergency beacon. Dr. Kelthera began calculating the station's evacuation procedures, and Dr. Meridios wondered if his academic career would survive the discovery that his life's work had been catastrophically wrong. 20 minutes later, the TCA vessel Wandering Star docked with Station Kepler 442, with a gentle thud that somehow managed to sound ominous. The docking bay's automated systems immediately activated every safety protocol simultaneously, bathing the area in warning lights that created a festive disco atmosphere completely at odds with the mortal terror of the station's crew. Commander Tobias Tank Kowalski emerged from his ship wearing what appeared to be medieval armor, but was actually standard human EVA gear. He was roughly 2 meters tall, covered in what the watching xenobiologist could only assume was defensive hide, and moved with the casual confidence of something that had never encountered a predator it couldn't handle. The station's security team had hastily assembled in the docking bay, wearing full environmental protection suits and maintaining what they hoped was a safe distance. Their plan, such as it was, involved following the Galactic protocols for dangerous species containment, which mainly consisted of pointing a lot of scanners at the threat and hoping it didn't notice. Tank removed his helmet and smiled. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. 43 different species of xenobiologists simultaneously discovered what humans looked like when they were being friendly, and the revelation was existentially terrifying. The forward-facing eyes marked him as a predator. The exposed dental structure suggested something that had evolved to bite through significantly more substantial materials than the usual fruits and processed nutrients that civilized species consumed. And the smile, the goddamn smile, revealed exactly how many teeth were involved in human expressions of goodwill. "Hey there," Tank said, his voice carrying the kind of casual warmth that suggested he was genuinely pleased to meet them. "Beautiful station you've got here. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Dr. Meridios, to his credit, managed to activate his translation matrix despite his mounting existential crisis. "Commander Kowalski, I presume? We were not expecting human contact. Our records indicated your species was extinct." Tank looked genuinely puzzled. "Extinct? That's weird. I just left Earth yesterday. Place is doing great. We've got about 12 billion people these days, and we're expanding to new worlds all the time. Though I guess communication lag between sectors can be pretty rough." The assembled academics exchanged glances that conveyed volumes about the inadequacy of their previous assumptions. Professor Vorthan stepped forward cautiously, her environmental suit sensors working overtime. "Commander, our records classify Earth as a Class 12 Deathworld with extinction event probability, absolute. How do you survive there?" Tank's expression shifted to the kind of good-natured confusion that suggested he was trying to understand why someone might ask whether fish could swim. "Survive? I mean, it's just home, you know? Pretty nice planet, actually. Great weather, beautiful oceans, decent mountain ranges. We've been doing some terraforming work on the newer colonies, but honestly, nothing beats the original." Terraforming. Dr. Kelthera's voice had climbed into frequencies that her species typically reserved for mating calls or imminent death warnings. "You're deliberately altering planetary environments." "Well, yeah," Tank replied, as if this were the most obvious thing in the galaxy. "Most of the worlds we found are pretty hostile. Toxic atmospheres, extreme weather patterns, aggressive wildlife. Takes a few decades of work to get them comfortable for permanent settlement." The xenobiologist stared at him. The concept of deliberately colonizing hostile worlds was so far outside their understanding that their translation matrices were struggling to process the words. "When you say aggressive wildlife," Dr. Meridios asked carefully, "what exactly do you mean?" Tank brightened, apparently delighted to discuss what he clearly considered a pleasant topic. "Oh, you know, the usual stuff. Acid-spitting predators, hive-mind parasites, atmospheric jellyfish with neurotoxic stingers. Colony 7 has these great crystalline bears that can phase through solid matter. Took us 3 years to figure out how to coexist with them. Turns out they just wanted us to stop building settlements on their hibernation grounds." The station's medical bay reported a sudden spike in cardiac stress indicators from 43 different species. Tank, meanwhile, seemed to be enjoying himself. "Actually," he continued, "that's kind of why I wanted to attend your conference. Xenobiology is fascinating, and we're always looking for better ways to understand the ecosystems on new worlds. Some of the life forms we've encountered are just incredible." Professor Vorthan managed to activate her suit's emergency sedation system before asking, "What do you mean by incredible?" "Well, there's this fungal network on Colony 12 that can process quantum information. We think it might be naturally sapient. And the coral cities on Colony 9 build these amazing geometric structures that seem to follow mathematical principles we haven't figured out yet. Oh, and there's a gas giant where the atmospheric organisms have developed what looks like a complex musical language. We're trying to learn how to communicate with them." The assembled academics were beginning to understand that their entire concept of hostile environment might need revision. They had spent millennia avoiding anything that seemed dangerous, while humans had apparently been seeking out the most impossible worlds they could find and treating them like interesting puzzles to solve. "Commander," Dr. Meridios asked, his voice carrying the weight of someone whose worldview was undergoing rapid and involuntary reconstruction, "what do humans consider a dangerous environment?" Tank thought about this for a moment, his expression suggesting he was trying to recall something genuinely concerning. Well, there was this one system where the local star was throwing off enough radiation to sterilize most organic compounds. Had to develop some pretty advanced shielding technology before we could establish a research station there. And there's a rogue planet in the outer rim where the atmospheric pressure is so high it turns water into metallic hydrogen, that one's still giving our engineers headaches. The station's AI chose that moment to provide an update. "Commander Kowalski, I should inform you that station protocols require biological threat assessment for all visitors from unclassified species. However, our databases list humans as extinction event probability, absolute, which seems inconsistent with your apparent friendliness." Tank laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both genuinely amused and completely terrifying to 43 different species of prey animals. "Extinction event? That's a new one. I mean, we're pretty good at surviving stuff, but I wouldn't call us dangerous. We're actually pretty social. Humans do better in groups, and we like meeting new people." "New people?" Dr. Kelthera asked weakly. "Other species, I mean. We've made contact with a few dozen civilizations so far, and it's been great. Trade partnerships, cultural exchange, scientific collaboration. Humans love learning about how other species solve problems." The xenobiologists were experiencing what philosophers might call cognitive whiplash. Everything they thought they knew about evolution, survival, and civilization was being casually dismantled by a cheerful human who seemed to think that deliberately seeking out mortal danger was a reasonable hobby. "Commander," Professor Vorthan asked, "what do humans do for recreation?" Tank's expression lit up with the enthusiasm of someone about to share his favorite pastimes. "Oh, all kinds of stuff. Rock climbing, deep-sea diving, extreme skiing, base jumping, mixed martial arts, spicy food competitions, horror movies, roller coasters." "I'm sorry," Dr. Meridios interrupted. "Did you say horror movies?" "Yeah, they are great. Stories designed to scare you, but in a fun way. Really gets the adrenaline going." The station's psychological counseling systems activated automatically as 43 different species simultaneously contemplated the concept of seeking out fear as entertainment. "And roller coasters?" Dr. Kelthera managed to ask. "Mechanical devices that simulate the experience of falling to your death, but safely. Humans love them. The bigger and faster, the better." Professor Vorthan's environmental suit began displaying warning messages about her species' cognitive stress responses. "Commander, forgive me, but this all sounds completely insane." Tank considered this thoughtfully. "I guess it might seem weird from the outside. But that's what makes meeting other species so interesting, different perspectives on what's normal." The AI interrupted with another announcement. "Station Commander Veltara has requested immediate consultation regarding diplomatic protocols. Apparently, there are no existing procedures for interaction with friendly neighborhood extinction events." "Friendly neighborhood extinction events?" Tank repeated, looking genuinely puzzled. "Is that what you're calling us? That seems a bit dramatic." Dr. Meridios was staring at his research materials with the expression of someone whose life's work had just been revealed as a collection of hilariously inadequate fairy tales. "Commander, according to our data, humans are supposed to be a mythological species from a planet too hostile to support life." "Hostile?" Tank looked genuinely confused. "I mean, Earth has its moments. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, the occasional asteroid impact. But that's just weather. Most humans don't even think about it unless they are planning outdoor activities." The assembled xenobiologists had reached a level of conceptual overload that their translation matrices were struggling to process. The idea of considering natural disasters as weather was so far outside their understanding that several of them were quietly having existential crises. "What about the predators?" Dr. Kelthera asked desperately. "The legends describe creatures of impossible size and aggression." "Oh, You mean like bears and sharks and stuff? Yeah, they are pretty cool. Most humans just give them space and respect. Coexistence isn't that hard once you understand their behavior patterns. Actually, a lot of people keep smaller predators as pets. Pets. Domestic animals that live with humans for companionship. Dogs, cats. Some people have exotic animals like snakes or lizards. My neighbor back on Earth has a pet crocodile named Princess Buttercup. The station's medical bay reported that several researchers had requested emergency sedation. Tank, meanwhile, seemed to be genuinely enjoying the conversation. You know, he said thoughtfully, this has been really educational. We always wondered why we hadn't encountered more galactic civilizations. Turns out you've all been avoiding the interesting parts of the galaxy. Professor Vorthen managed to ask, what do you mean by interesting? Well, all the challenging environments, complex ecosystems, worlds where life had to get creative to survive. Those are usually the places where evolution produces the most fascinating results. Dr. Meridios was having what his species would later classify as an academic breakthrough, though it felt more like a mental breakdown. Commander, would you be willing to give a guest lecture on human adaptation strategies? Tank's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. That sounds great. I'd love to share some of our research on extreme environment colonization. And maybe you could tell me about your species' approaches to xenobiology. I bet you've got some techniques we haven't thought of. The station's AI provided another update. Station Commander Veltara has approved cultural exchange protocols and requests that Commander Kowalski be provided with appropriate quarters and access to conference facilities. She has also updated human classification to friendly neighborhood extinction event pending further review. Tank laughed again, a sound that the assembled academics were beginning to find less terrifying and more genuinely warm. Friendly neighborhood extinction event. I like that. Mind if I use it on our business cards? As the impromptu first contact session continued, the xenobiologists began to realize that their entire understanding of evolution, survival, and civilization had been fundamentally limited. They had spent millennia developing sophisticated technologies to avoid danger, while humans had developed even more sophisticated technologies to seek it out safely. Dr. Meridios found himself looking forward to rewriting his research from scratch. Professor Vorthen was already planning joint expedition proposals, and Dr. Kelthera was quietly wondering if humans might be interested in sharing their extreme environment adaptation techniques. Tank, meanwhile, was just happy to make new friends and perhaps convince them to try coffee. The galaxy, it seemed, was about to become a much more interesting place. As the conference resumed with its new human guest lecturer, Station Kepler 442's AI updated its logs with a note that would later become famous throughout the Galactic Prosperity Collective. Initial assessment of human species revised from extinction event probability, absolute, to extinction event probability, absolute. But apparently they consider this a feature, not a bug. And somewhere in the vast bureaucratic machinery of galactic civilization, 47 different species began quietly revising their colonization protocols to include a new category: human-adjacent worlds. Proceed with caution and adequate coffee supplies. Tank, blissfully unaware that he had just accidentally terrified and then charmed an entire academic conference, began his lecture on why dangerous planets make the best neighbors with the kind of enthusiastic smile that had started this whole delightful misunderstanding in the first place. The galaxy would never be quite the same.